welcome everybody. And I had a lot of contact with people on LinkedIn who were interested in coming to this meeting, and it doesn't appear that they made it. So I know it's a difficult time. That's why we record these, and we'll post it online later. And then we can share the link, pass it around, make sure that those who missed it are able to view it after the fact. So yeah, about me. I've been in the design, imaging, not graphics entirely, but as far as imaging goes, industry for 44 years, and that includes photography. I used to run a press. I ran a press in 1981, as a matter of fact, back in the day before there were any computers, and so it was stripping plates with varnish and loading them on the platen and inking up the rollers, and everything was done analog. So we had these huge process cameras that shot images to film, and then the film was transferred to plate. You stripped everything together before that. It was just quite a process. It's an art unto itself. But it has brought us into this era of moving from analog to digital that allows so many more possibilities, but a lot more technical know-how. So it's not like you can just sit down and draw with a pen and ink and then get that out in the world. You have to know how to get that pen and ink out into the world. It's all a digital platform, and it's the same thing with any new technology that's coming along, particularly the embellishment industry that we're going to be discussing today. Why do I do this? Pretty much before I came here, where we have an MGI jet varnish and the technology to do what we're about to explore. I worked in a pre-press department, and so you have to deal with the digital, the analog, getting things to a commercial press, getting things to an iGen, getting things to a Ricoh 8100. So you have to channel all of this information to all these different machines using all these different interfaces and all this different technology. And each one has their own requirements. And if anybody has ever laid out a plate layout in Signa workstation, my heart goes out to you, man. That is the minute, minuscule amount of details that you have to. You got your camera working.
Hey, there it
Yeah, yay.
is.
The number of minuscule details you have to attend to just totally crushes your creativity. So what we're trying to do is work through the technology and bring it back into the realm of creativity so that we can get them to work together. And anybody who's had to learn one of the Adobe platforms of Photoshop, Illustrator, especially Illustrator, knows that struggle of keeping your right brain and left brain connected and balanced together to make that all work. Towards the end of my 10 years in pre-press, about year 8, we got some samples because they were considering purchasing a digital embellishment equipment to enhance their finishing facilities. And they tacked these huge B2 sheets up on the wall that probably went through the machine 8, 10, 12 times in order to get all these different foils, varnish effects, and all that on that one sheet. And you just walk up to the wall and feel it, and you're like, oh my God, what is this? How did this happen? How does this work? And I had no idea, but it's like, I want it. Well, they ultimately didn't get the machine. They didn't have the space for it. So they had to nix the idea. But then this place behind me called me and said, hey, we're getting a machine. You want to run it? I'm like, I'm in. I don't care. I'm in. When do I start? So that's how and why I do this. And
So Matt, I think it's important, if you don't mind me just jumping in. So not only are you an award-winning designer for digital embellishment, but you're also the one running the press, correct?
yeah.
So you have
Yeah.
really both aspects, and I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I think one of the biggest challenges most users out there have is that a lot of this design, would you agree, is coming from somebody who's never been on this press or this time of technology? And really, a lot of it is, it looks good in my brain and it might look good on the screen, but when it actually comes off on the paper, it's not what I thought it was going to look like. Is that something that you feel you see a lot of when people send you files?
That's what I deal with every day, because either they're designing it for a different machine that has different capabilities and a different set of specs and requirements, or they're just doing, and we're gonna go over some of the differences between what's really obvious things to do and what are the really curious things to do, and how the two differentiate, because anyone can do obvious, and technically it's not what the machine was designed to do. So these are the molds that we're trying to break out of. I encourage you during the meeting to take notes. So if you have a notepad, write down your questions as you go along, and maybe we can get them answered along the way. Maybe the questions will answer themselves as we move through this, because I have a bunch of slides to show you. And I also want to know where your curiosity lies for any future presentations. This is a 101 course. I mean, I'm taking a step way back. I'm trying to figure out how to present these ideas to someone who has no idea how it works. So some of them may be a little simplified for you if you've already been doing this for a while, but I'll guarantee you'll still get a fresh perspective on what's going on regardless.
Good.
So let me just jump into my share screen, and
And
I
so
hope.
while you're doing that, I'm gonna just let you guys know, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. And Matt, I'll be making sure that those questions get to you at a good time. So if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat, and we will try to get to them as quickly as we can.
Okay, so barring the idea of going into like presentation mode here, I just want to make sure that everyone can see
Yep.
what's here. Okay, it's of good size, etc. So it is Embellishments 101 for polymer and varnish. This is kind of a co-conspiracy between MGI and Taktiful. So okay, yeah,
It's a collaboration, not a conspiracy.
if you really want to break it down to what it is, it's a conspiracy. We want to inform the world, and there's really no other way to do that than to just put it out there and see what people will absorb. Some of the things I want to cover are here. We want to go over what's possible. What are some definitions? We want to look at some of the machinery. So if some of you are not familiar with some aspects of the machinery, it's just an overview. Don't get worried about it. Don't freak out like, oh my God, machinery, electronics. But if you've never seen the underside of a print head, well, you will today. There's stock requirements, operator interventions. I want to talk about perceived value and design basics. Again, the obvious or curious stuff that we talked about, the color shifts that are caused by varnish, and there's other little perceptual things that I can't even begin to explain that people have expressed to me that need to come to our attention. I want to discuss some echo printing, some white on white, which is technically clear on white, and black on black, which is technically clear on black. It just has the appearances of being white on white or black on black. So we're going to look at printing on stocks that have no printing. We're just embellishing. And then looking at some uncoated stocks and what's possible with that, because that's always a sore spot with people. And finishing requirements. And a lot of people, when businesses decide to get this equipment, they just think they're going to finish it the same way, but no, there's specific requirements when it comes to that. So what's possible? Well, it's kind of narrow and it's really wide. It all depends on where your imagination goes. And I was going to add this into this presentation of slides, and I thought, no, that's too organic. And there's a whole different world out there that needs to be constantly updated, I guess you could say. I always go with the idea that less is more, and you'll see more and more throughout this why. But take a look at some of these things that we've done. This is just varnish, one pass of varnish. This is 6 passes of foil. So we have purple, gold, silver, green, blue, and silver.
Did you say 6 passes of foil?
6 passes of foil: green, purple, gold, silver, blue, and yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's
no fear.
No fear. That's 6. And then there was another pass of holographic foil on the back side. and then there's varnish on top of this. So you're looking at 7 passes right here. But if you were to add up how much varnish I actually use to do this, it's minuscule. It's practically none. And it's incredibly difficult to photograph because the pieces are so small. So if you were to look at this in real life, it's an entirely different experience. This is red foil and varnish. The only place that there's red foil is on the outline of the lettering. Not the outline, not next to the white, but further out beyond that. So it actually looks like there's more foil there than there is, but it's mostly varnish. There's a thin pinstripe of red foil. I don't know if you can see where my cursor is right here.
Yeah.
Very thin pinstripe. But that sets the whole thing off. It creates a frame and makes the brain, fools the brain into thinking there's more foil here than there is. This is functional print. This is a multi-pass job because we want to build up layers that are sensitive to the touch of sight-impaired individuals. So you could actually print Braille using these techniques. It requires a lot of technique and care. So here's a real estate cover, the effective use of drop shadows. These are floating drop shadows underneath the silver foil at the top and the bottom. And it's just so vague, it's so barely there, it's just enough to make it look like it's floating off the page. Here's another example of the
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about that. A lot of people never even, and I'm curious if you guys from NAPCO, have you guys ever used drop shadows with foil in any of your designs?
No, but we definitely use varnish to make drop shadows all the time for people.
Interesting.
So it's a really quick and simple technique that actually adds more dimension to the existence of the dimension that you're already creating. And this is just varnish on Plike. It's a very pale blue Plike. It's a Plike. I use the term loosely. Plike meaning plastic-like. It would be like hoover the floor. It means that you vacuum the floor, but it is a brand of paper, but this may not actually be the brand of Plike, but it is a plastic-like paper.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of that for book covers too, no? If I'm not mistaken.
I use this is the inside of a folder.
Oh, I think they're trying to show us something in the back of the video there. What are you guys showing us?
We saw your next slide and we were like, we got your card here.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah, right there.
I can hold it up to the camera if you want.
I'm kind of flattered that you've kept it.
Are you kidding me? Yes, you did such a good job. Oh my god.
Yeah, that is all AI generated, and the whole background, the shape of the tree was cut out of the rings of the shape, and then adjusted the levels to create a solid mask, and then I trimmed the edges for the mask. So the whole design was AI, and I actually did this for a different customer, and they wanted to go with their own design, although they liked it. And we're like, well, why don't we just use it? It's kind of our colors. Let's use it. So that was my experiment with the pinkish purple foil that K Laser has. That was actually a sample test roll. Because I was trying to find a color that worked on the star, and red wasn't working. I actually did a prototype in red and blue, and it just was. And I thought, what if we just go way off left field? And that's where I came up with that pink, and it worked out pretty well. In addition to the glitter silver holographic foil, yeah. So here's offset uncoated stock. This customer wanted their holiday card to be written on, and they wanted to be able to write on it anywhere, which means you can't use a coated stock. And if you did use a coated stock, you'd have to use a Sharpie and be really careful until it dried. So they didn't want that hassle. They just wanted to use a standard ballpoint pen. That was their requirement. So we had to run this on offset stock. And this took 2 passes, one to lay down the base varnish that halfway soaked into the sheet, and then the second pass with the varnish and foil on top of that to get the the height. But we got a pretty good height with that. That's pretty deep. With an uncoated stock that theoretically should never work on a machine like this. We do a lot of invitations. This is just varnish and gold foil. This is gold foil and varnish as well. Another invitation. This opened. It's a gatefold in the middle. I think we might have won an award for this year. But it's just gold foil and varnish. But honestly, folks, to look at this thing where the light shifts with the reflection as you change the angle of it, it's absolutely stunning. It's just nothing less than eye candy. This is another less is more idea, trying to follow the pattern of the striations in the design without using too much varnish. If you tried to like put more varnish on that, it would just look all splattered and it wouldn't have any kind of appeal to me whatsoever. That and the fact that it would probably never dry. This is
It's
one.
funny. Well, if you go back, there's just one quick slide, just something for everybody. I've seen a lot of people now starting to get into artwork reproduction. And when you're doing artwork reproduction, you're trying to basically redo the brush strokes that you would get off of a paintbrush. It's really important to use very fine lines like this. So that reminded me of that painting aspect of art.
And a lot of those reproductions that you just mentioned will require multiple passes. To lay that varnish down at different micron thicknesses in order to get the results that you want. So mapping that out almost requires CAD. This is that pillowy type effect that I like to see. This is one pass of varnish. Boom, we're done. That's all the customer wanted. They didn't want it on the candy drops. They didn't want it on the other text. They didn't want it anywhere else. They just wanted it on the word pieces. So that's what we gave them. But I created a mask that was multidimensional that gave it this pillow-like embossed look. It almost looks like it was rendered in Photoshop. This stuff just blows my mind. This Mira lava. This is Mira, M-I-R-R-I, lava red. The paper comes this way, and there's no printing here. It's just varnish and foil. That's it. So that's what the clear varnish does to the surface of this paper. It just completely, I mean, look at it. It turns into like this crystal lens. So this is a holographic metallic substrate. It's a foil substrate, and then you print whatever you want on top. And
so, Matt, I think we did have a discussion in a couple of designer meetings ago where we found out people were creating their own board like this by taking a white sheet and just putting down, in this case, red foil on where they wanted, and then putting matte lamination on top of that red foil, and then it would kind of create a very similar effect. So if you guys ever want to create your own board where you put this in just selective areas, that's something that some of our members have been sharing with us.
Yeah. This was for a label, gloss on gloss. It's just gold foil on a laminated, gloss laminated black printed sheet. So that's two layers, actually three if you include the varnish that's under the foil. You can use different textures in your masking to get different. I mean, if you just put the same texture on each one, on all those stars, it would be pretty boring. So you can break it up, change your design. This we did for ourselves. This is one of our earliest pieces, but this also highlights where we wanted to be careful how and where we put the varnish. Sometimes putting it in the darker areas will create that embossed look, and it tends to amplify the color underneath as well. We do a lot of VDP, variable data, certificates, whatnot. So that requires the use of a barcode and the RIP that accesses that variable data technique.
And I still think it's probably the most
underutilized.
And probably highest value when it comes to what the market can really expect from this is exactly this variable data type of foil.
So we actually have multiple streams, like dual streams of variable data in our shop here, where it comes off the pre-press, it goes to the iridescent, they print all the postcards, not only with customized names in in the text, the address of what they're saying in the message. But then there's the address that was also pre-sort standard. So everything has to be arranged so that everything stays in order, so that when it comes out, it goes in the trays properly. And
Right.
then when it comes off the iridescent, it has to go to my machine. It has to be, now it has to be, well, when it comes off the iridescent, it's going to be in reverse order. Then when it comes to me, it's going to be flipped back in the correct order, so it lays in the trays correctly from front to back in the
So we
correct
have a
order.
we have a quick question. Are these files coming in a PDF format?
Everything is worked as a PDF, but I'm going to go into a little live proofing section
Okay.
here a little later.
Okay.
I need to move along this. I didn't mean to spend so much time on this, but I can move through everything pretty quick. It's just there will be less detail, but everything is PDF. Everything ends up being a PDF, and that's going to be a whole thing unto itself. There's no way we could cover that in this meeting. We do a lot of invitations, a lot of invitation inserts, boxes. This was I designed the die. We have one varnish and one foil on the outside. It looks like it's more than that, but it's not. We just have that in the negative space, the little swirls, and then the gold foil inside the waves. There's more detail on the inside of this box. It's meant to be illuminated from the inside, but I didn't take any pictures of the interior as of yet. Another box, this has a little lid that opens up, mimics the water. There's foiling on the inside. Another box, if you look in the lower left panel, you can see that there is some clear varnish overlay as well. This is the mirror lava as well, but this started with the full mirror sheet, and then we ran it through the iridescent to put the red on it. So we put the red on this one ourselves. You can put any color on it. We have a customer that uses it for a business card, and they use blue. Speaking of blue, this is just foil on print. They also did this for their folders. It was an entire presentation, absolutely beautiful.
I love that design.
It's
I even love that
so
color foil. That color foil really does pop.
it's so simple. That's
Yeah.
the infinity blue
From Infinity.
and then here we do more of the image map type style on the laptop and the AI stuff going on in the background there. And we also, it's good for, like, you could use variable data to create your table tents for events, that type of thing. This is one of our brochures. Look at that roll fold. Did I not nail that die line? That's one of the tightest little pieces I've ever created, but it rolled up just, and then the tab slips into the little slot, and it was just absolutely flawless.
And I'm sure a lot of people have realized finishing digitally embellished pieces are not the easiest thing in the world, especially when it comes to the cutting.
Not.
Yeah, so that's.
So this is foil on foil on foil. So we have purple on gold on silver.
Wow.
And this is, another angle of the same thing. This is just a purple on gold. So you can put foil on foil, and you don't have to knock it out. That was just, I put that solid gold down, and then I put the purple right on top of it, and it laid right on there beautifully. If you try to knock it out, you're going to end up with some registration issues. Holographic foil is absolutely one of my favorites. This is interesting because underneath the wording at the bottom where it says Intercontinental Miami Make-A-Wish Ball, that's knocked out. That's
but you went to the edge on that one. That's typically something that we don't see a lot of people do, right? Because the foil might chip, but you pulled it off.
No, this worked out really well, and surprisingly so. So there's actually a bar of black underneath the words, so that it's actually black inside there. And then I just registered the foil around it, and it trimmed and scored out. It looks like metal.
Right here, by the way, did you actually end up knocking this down around here so that the crease wouldn't be? That looks like you went lower in varnish, like you almost. Oh,
nope. We creased right through it.
Okay.
And did it while the varnish was still a little wet.
Okay.
Yeah. If you wait too long, it's gonna probably cause a problem. So, and last but not least, this was an interesting effect because we didn't have any matte foil. customer wanted gold, so we used the shiny gold and sent it back to press and put aqueous soft touch on top of it. So the foil will actually hold that aqueous soft touch pretty well, and you wouldn't think that it would, but it does. So I'm just going to jump into the rest of this because we still have a half an hour and or less. Everyone familiar with these terms? Is there anything here that you do not understand? Is everything
Walk us through it real quick. Is there?
okay?
We got overlays. Oh, there we go.
Yeah. So, you know, it's all here. I just wanted to make sure because these are some terms that we're going to be touching on throughout, the next 20 minutes. I just want to make sure that everybody understands what they mean. And I'm sure that everybody here does. If you don't, hopefully this will help. Here's the machine. This is the one that I run, not the exact one, but it's very similar. If you want to look at everything in order, it starts on your right and comes out of the machine on your left. So you can see the arrows across the top are going to show you the direction. There's a big belt that runs through the whole machine with fans underneath that sucks the paper down to it. And so the part that you're varnishing or foiling is facing up, and it literally just pulls it down to the belt, holds it in place, and then it sprays or foils or does whatever it needs to do along the way. So here at the far right loading table, you have a feeder with a corona treatment, which is optional, but a lot of them have it. You do have a registration table that pulls everything against a registration guide, but then it hits, and then you have your controls here, your digital controls. But then you have this scanner, and when you feed a file to the machine, it gives it an image of the document that you're varnishing or foiling. And then it scans the sheet that's going into the machine and compares the two. And if they don't match, it makes digital adjustments for, like, if the sheet shrank because of heat, or it expanded because it was too damp, or if it skewed, or if something else went weird with it. And it makes very small adjustments to make sure that where the varnish is being sprayed on, it's in the right spot. And it makes a lot of those corrections automatically. So that's the really cool thing about these MGI machines, and no one else has that. In this compartment, you have the inkjet heads. We're going to see those in a minute. They literally spray this thick gloppy varnish onto this paper that's moving very quickly underneath it. So there's a lot of calculations going on per millisecond in order to make this thing happen. Then you've got the curing heads in here. It's a UV activated curing system. There's ultraviolet lights in there that if you stare in them for a few seconds too long, you will go temporarily blind. They're very strong UV lights. So you're supposed to wear these special goggles if you're in the machine and it's running and that kind of thing. This is a pass-through area that leads you to the iFoil unit, a loading area prior to the iFoil. This is a hot foiling unit. It's about as hot as the 300-degree oven. So you don't want to be sticking your fingers in there when it's all heated up. You will get burned. The beauty of it is that you just assign an impression depth, like which area of the sheet you want those rollers to come down and then go back up. And then the foil just sticks to wherever you put the varnish. And then
I don't know who's all right, I got you, but keep going.
Okay. Alrighty. Yeah, I was having trouble understanding. Here's the print heads. This is where we come back to the idea that less is more, because these print heads can only lay down so much varnish.
Right.
If you're putting down large globs, you end up with this varnish deficit. They literally run out of having enough varnish to be able to spray it out onto the sheet. So on the left here, you're looking down across the varnish, the platform that holds all the varnish heads. This is looking down. So there's a lot of electronics, there's a lot of tubing, there's varnish flowing through tubes, there's data wires, there's control wires, and then the photo on the right is looking up underneath all of this to where the print heads actually are. So the challenge for all this is that these print heads have to stitch together as one big operation. So in this machine, there's more in other machines and different configurations as well. This is a 2-bar 14 wide. So 2 bars meaning you've got 2 sets of 5 and they're both spraying the same thing. One is just a millisecond after the other because the sheet's moving underneath it, right? But the second row of 5 is spraying exactly the same thing the first row did. So that way you can move everything through faster and get more varnish on that. Otherwise, you have to slow it down because it's going to take longer to spray that same amount of varnish onto that same area because you have half the print heads to do it. It's simple physics. So this it has to be adjusted and calibrated, and all the heads have to be microscopically adjusted so that everything butts up together. You don't end up with gaps or streaks. Paper is an issue. Oh my gosh, the paper that you run through this machine. The manufacturer only wants coated stock, but we know we can like get around that. Coated and pre-coated and laminated are preferred, but we know that different papers have different surface activities. And you can see here in the lower right or at the bottom where there's different dyne levels or different activity levels to each type of paper that you choose and how you treat it. So a high dyne level, the varnish is going to spread out. A low dyne level, that varnish is going to bead up and form a peak. You don't want too much of one and too much of another. You want to be somewhere in between the two. And
Goldilocks.
yeah, and you can make some adjustments on the machine to change that. You can speed up or slow down the belt. You can change the how fast it cures the varnish on the sheet. So you can slow down the cure rate, even though it happens in milliseconds, so that it spreads out a little bit more before it solidifies, that type of thing. But those are some operator controls that they have. Let's see. Paper. We have a yes, maybe, and a no. The maybe is in the middle, and that can be that if you have some technical expertise or some workarounds, you can get these stocks to work. But this is a general guideline that yes, you use coated stock, which would include C1S, C2S, any pre-coated stock that's like an aqueous, whether soft touch or gloss aqueous. Laminated sheets work beautifully. Any plastic light sheets. You remember when Xerox came out with Never Tear? You know, you get the sample sheets and you're trying to tear that sheet, but it's technically a polymer sheet and you're unable to tear it. So those stocks work really well. Gloss labels and vinyl labels work particularly well in these machines. Clay, with the paper shortage and supply interruptions that we've been having post-COVID, and we're still having them. There's a lot of stocks that we can't get. A lot of the mills have started putting out cheap coated paper that's got the clay coating, and it's usually like it used to just only be like if you got a metallic paper like the Mira or something that looks very metallic. It's a metallized paper, and you flip it over and it feels like it's coated. That's usually just a clay coat, and that's on there just to make sure that the sheet runs through the machine a little more smoothly. You can, in some cases, get varnish to stick to it, but I only explore that on a case-by-case basis. Uncoated needs to be a dense uncoated, and you're going to have to run it through the machine more than once, and you're going to have to get the build up that you want, and you're probably going to have to put down a layer of print, whether it's like a rich black to get the varnish to lay on top of it, or keep it from soaking through, particularly if you have a waxy toner.
Yeah, a lot of people are using that clear toner from
Yeah.
Xerox Lyridesk to be able to put
Yeah.
down. Yeah,
And you can put down the clear toner as well. But then you've got registration issues with that because now it's hard to see. So you're going to have a really good trained eye to make sure, because if your registration is off and it's falling off of that clear and you're not seeing it, then it's going to soak into the sheet and it's going to look really bad. Plain labels, I wouldn't run. Maybe some of them will work. Some of them do. We have some here from a manufacturer that do work. It's like an uncoated plain label, but you have to test those on a case by case basis. Never send a grit stock through it, cork, felt, anything that's really porous or anything that's text weight. Those are definite no-nos. They just don't work, and they can actually damage the machine. It's really bad news. They can do a lot on these machines. I can't speak for the Scodix or the Duplo or, Jet Effects or any of those, but the Jet Varnish has a lot of operator controls. You can go in, you have an image editor, you can expand or contract the image, you can move it, stretch it, increase or decrease the number of microns of varnish you're laying on top of it. You can cut new borders, you can change your curing levels like we did, change your belt speed, that changes how the varnish lays down. Same with the suction fan level, that can change how the varnish lays down. You can change your scan method to get it to register exactly the way you want to. So in a nutshell, you can build or modify your mask layer on board the machine. You can add or delete those mask elements. Say you want to take the varnish off of one of those stars in the sky, you can go in and just delete it off the mask. So you can trim and extend mask areas, and you can copy and paste sections from one file to another. So let's say I set up a job and it was really hard to get it to register. I had to tweak it for a long time. I had to stretch it and pull it for a while and run multiple tests, and I finally get it. And then we issued the proof to the customer, and they're like, this is great, but I want to change this one thing. And you're like, to start all over, that's another 45 minutes of a nightmare. So I'm just going to take that one, I'm going to just delete the part they didn't like, go into a new file, copy it, and paste it into the one that I was using, and I'm good to go.
Is that why designers love running this machine, Matt?
It is, because, well, and you'll see here in another few minutes, another benefit of having those options on board. So there's all these different machines. These are just the MGI machines on display here, some of them. There's big ones, little ones. They use different varnishes. They run at different speeds. Some have different print head designs. Some can put on lower levels of varnish. Some can put on only higher levels of varnish. Some have cutoffs for, like, if it's 30% and below, they're not even going to lay anything on the sheet. So you have to design with the machine in mind. So I've gotten files for the Evo, and then they expect me to turn out the same results that the Evo would, and I cannot. I just simply do not have the capability to do that because my machine is more limited than the Evo. So you have to be careful when you're creating your files or receiving files for print and prepress, what they're designed, what the intent was. I can usually look at the write-up and say, no, we just can't run this. We need to figure out what else to do. We like to design for perceived value because this is special. It's upscale. It's exclusive. It has an elegant element to it. It's exciting. It's luxurious, but it can also be fun and functional, like you saw before with the touch print, whether Braille or other characters that you sense with touch. But it is beyond, it's considered beyond CMYK. It's considered post-finishing. It's tactile, textured. It provides a relief. Keywords would be shiny, foil, luminous, reflective, and bright. So all of these attributes are with this product, and you can see what's on display here. That all applies. When it comes to design, I like to color outside the lines, but you need to dream a little and think negative. And I don't mean like bah humbug negative. I mean like use your negative space. And that means we're going to be looking at these four pieces. The first one we're going to look at is going to be the two on the right. That's the front and the back. This was an 8.5 by 11 that folded down. It's a large piece. It's 3 panels that folded down to 8.5 by 11. So it looks kind of weird the way that it's all spread out here, but this is what the customer sent me. So look at his original design. So on the left, we're looking at the outside of the piece, and this is the print piece, and this is the varnish that he sent. Just a big blob of varnish on, you know, the peony. And this is the inside spread from top to bottom. This is the print. And this is the varnish he was proposing to put on it. Just blobs of varnish. And look, especially, he's putting it on the white. He's only putting it on the white. And I'm like, come on. Jamil, it's like, Jamil, you can better than this. He's like, well, come up with what you think. So here's his original, and this is what I came up with. So immediately you look at it and say, whoa, that's way less varnish. This is what he did, and this is what I came up with. Notice it was all on the white, and here I'm not even touching the white.
So those of us who don't know why you don't want to put that 3D varnish on white, can you explain to us really quickly why that is?
We'll get to that in a minute, because I'm actually doing it more and more and more and more, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So these are just the masks. I've removed the print part, and you can see the difference in the amount of varnish that's going to be laid down. Less is more. So let's look at what we ended up with. Holy cow. Yeah. Look at that. So putting it on the outside of the white, extending into what surrounds it, darkens, and it creates that embossed effect. And not only that, but it makes the white appear whiter. And if you were to put the varnish on the white, it actually dulls the white and makes it look less bright. So,
well, those photo initiators, right? Those turn yellow, I guess.
Well, and it depends on the stock too. Over time, it technically turns yellow, but depending on the stock that you have, it can, and we'll get to that in a minute. So look what it did here. I mean, it's like nowhere on the white, and it's in the glow of the blue. It's on the flower. Here it just covered. This almost looks like blue foil, but that's varnish. It's just, that looks like foil, but that's varnish. Just a little bit on the ladybugs and solid on the numbers. Look what it did to all the flowers, all these peonies. It's just, it's delightful. Look at that. It's just, how could you not like that? We did a live proof up to him. He's up in Boca. He runs the Maltz Jupiter Theater, and the design department used to be the Burt Reynolds Theater, and they've turned it into this, you know, upscale thing now. And so they have to come up with these really impressive pieces because it's all donor sponsored. So they have these galas to raise money to fund the theater, and so this is what brings their money in. That what you're looking at brings in their money.
Yeah, fundraising is a great use of embellishment. Definitely.
Yeah. So this all goes back to the obvious and curious concept. So now that I did for Kevin here, this was what he sent me. This is what I don't like about a lot of customers, including you, Kevin, because you come up with a piece and then you say, okay, now embellish it.
Yeah.
When actually the embellishment should be part of the design process. So now I have to come up with some ideas on, well, how am I going to embellish this original document here? So this would be the obvious thing, you know, put the varnish on the white, cover the girl in varnish. And so this is the varnish plate. That's the obvious choice. This is what anybody out there is going to send to me. This is what I see get sent to me day in, day out. You know, granted, the masking on the hair, I have to admit, I did a really good job of isolating that hair. So the edges would be a little fuzzy. They wouldn't be like a hard, solid edge on the varnish. So at least it had that going for it. But you could do this. Use the negative space. You could do this. Or you could do this, kind of a mid-century thing. Just put a design around her. Why do you want to put it on her? Or you could do this. Now I don't want to put it on the white type, so I'm going to do that. And I'm going to have it outline all of the type and the logo and not go into the white, because that will amplify the effect of the white. So it's not going on her at all. And it's not going on the title at all. But there's all this stuff going on around them. But Kevin says, hey, the obvious thing would be to put varnish on the glass part of the eyeglasses. So let's just put it on the frames. And I'm like, okay. So I
You know,
dropped.
I show this at D-Scoop all week. You would not believe the amount of people who pulled that out. It goes, I like how you just put it on the frames. It's
Yep.
funny how that really popped, because it's the subtlety of the embellishment that sometimes makes it pop.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was your idea, Kevin. And thank you for that. I just took the image into Illustrator, took my pen, drew a mask, imported that back into my InDesign document, dropped it on where it needed to go, and we were done.
Yeah.
So here's the result. These are actual photos of the printed piece. There's the topographic background. You can see it just goes up barely to her hairline. There's the outline on the titling. Makes it very white, makes it stand out because it creates that refraction of the light on the edge that darkens it underneath. And so you can see how we're avoiding all the white. And there we are, just backing up a little bit. You can see it on her glasses there, but not on her. There's nothing on her. So when you pick up and you're holding it by the edges, right? You're grasping it like this. So you're going to be feeling that.
Yeah.
If you hand that to someone and they don't really look at it, they're going to feel that and go, oh, whoa, wait a minute, what's this? That's a big deal. That's what you want to do. So where would you put the varnish on something like this? It's just kind of like, you'd look at that, the eyelashes, the pupil of the eye. Well, okay. This is what I did. So I
Oh, nice.
created this spongy frame around the eye, which is going to amplify that light background by just, I don't know, 5% in density. And the eye is already looking like a planet. So I'm going to actually put the Earth there. And there's the varnish mask right there. So it will have a little texture. It looks like a frame. It's a little weird, but that's my style. So the color of varnish is elusive. If you were to put it on a certain sheet, it would probably measure like 0.330 for cyan, magenta, yellow, black. It's going to depend on how thick you put it on. It's going to depend on the paper brightness, whiteness, and shade. And anybody that runs like an Iridescent or iGen or one of those big digital color printers knows that you have to have the machine scan the color of the paper and subtract that from your color profiles. So that way that doesn't get added to the color. It's subtracted from the color. So I've put varnish on Pro Digital and it looks a little cyanish blue. I put varnish on Futura and it looks really magenta red. So it really depends on the paper stock. It depends on the surface finish. Was it laminated? What were the toner and ink properties? What is your viewing angle? And what kind of lighting are you using? All of those things come into play. You can't nail it down, but it's a good case for live proofing. So this is the live proof that we use, and we've been doing it since the dawn of when the machine arrived. You have your native file. Within that, you can create variations. You create a PDF. You rip it for the JVTI, which goes to the MGI. So you go to print there. You also rip it for the digital press to create your sample sheets that feed the MGI. Then you evaluate your results, and then you send your proof to the client. If the results that you get aren't satisfactory, then obviously you go back to start and start the whole process over again. Well, what can I do different? What variation can I generate? So within your native file, whether it's Illustrator or InDesign, you can create as many variations and layers and turn them on and off as you want and export each one as a separate run. And then once you get those on the machine and they're processed on the JBTI, you can open them and change them there too, or mix and match and take pieces and cut and paste them all together, or say, oh, this is too thick, I need to shrink it down a little, or this is too pale, I need to expand it up a little bit. So many things you can do. So we live proof a lot of things to our customers and actually hand them the piece and say, this is what you're going to get. Enough said. So echo printing, we print a really light or a slightly darker color of the background. So all of this foliage was printed just maybe 5% darker than the background. And then we went back and registered the varnish on top of it. So we just echoed that back on top, and then it created yet a slightly darker effect by laying the varnish on top. So if I just put the varnish on there as blind, if that background was just that solid green, it wouldn't have been as effective. Just want to bump it up maybe 5 to 10%, then put your varnish on top, register it exactly where it needs to be, and this is what you end up with. White on white, got to be careful with this. So this is one of our customers that insists on it because they want that feel. So first of all, registering this is a nightmare. Second of all, I actually like it. It's kind of reminiscent of thermography. And just because it's an invitation that has a temporary usage, it's not going to be, it'll yellow over time. So it's not going to be a problem because it's an invitation they're going to get and it will be discarded. This is another application. You can see that in the fairy dust, which was holographic silver foil, they put a smattering of varnish around it. And this was a soft touch aqueous coated stock that was printed on the indigo. So it's a very high-end print job. It was a very good coating. So because you have that coating on there, it actually applies better and looks better and gave them the effect that they wanted. This was a book cover. It was exactly what they wanted. Black on black. None of these pieces that you're looking at right here were printed. This was just varnish and foil on paper. And so you can get this depth of change from just laying on varnish, except the lower right corner, that logo is black foil. So it has slightly different, it's something you would have to look at in person to see the difference, but it has more of a purpley look to it.
That's awesome.
It has a color.
That's cool. I don't think people are not taking advantage of black foil nearly enough.
Yeah, we have a customer that almost exclusively insists on using this technique for all of their materials, and that is, of course, obviously Southeast Toyota. Here was the perceptual thing that I looked at. If you look at this bookmark that I did for Dolly, it looks pretty straightforward, right? I mean, it's fairly pleasing color. They wanted the varnish on white, but it was Star Dream, so it was going to tolerate it well. And it actually had some speckly shine that came through the white varnish, and it enhanced the look of the piece quite a bit. But these were the two samples on the right that I sent to the customer to approve, and the only difference between them is the letters, the number 200. On the furthest right one, it has the pinstripe of gold foil around it. On the one on the left, it's just printed gold, and it has the varnish over it. I sent this to the customer, and they said, we like it, but we like the one where Dolly's skin tone is pinker and a little bit brighter. Well, it was the same print job. There was absolutely no difference in the printing whatsoever.
No kidding.
It was on the same sheet.
Oh.
And I just cut off, I set up the mask so that they each had the outline of foil on the 200, but on one of them I just went in, like I explained, and just deleted it. Yeah. And then they were literally printed side by side on the same sheet. So it was the same sheet, it was the same run, but that's how they perceived the difference, is that to them it changed her skin tone somehow. So beware of what this will do to the rest of the perception of the piece that you're printing on. It can change, very strange ways. I'm going to touch on this real quick. Uncoated stocks, we're almost done. We did this nice piece on, I think it's Nina Environments, and I love this stock. I absolutely love it. But they wanted these little, I guess they're not coffee beans, they're pistachios on the right.
Okay.
Those aren't printed. That's just varnish.
Wow.
But that's what it did to the paper stock. There's no toner under those to darken the sheet.
Yeah, some paper stocks could just take it, right? Some of them are just
Yeah,
they're able to pull that varnish on top and not pull it all the way through. And
but I love what it did as far as the density to it, and it fits. It looks like it was intentional. When that came off the machine, I was like, whoa, I didn't expect that. More uncoated stocks, this is possible. You can see on the left, I put down heavy black. That's
yeah.
showing the varnish on the black.
So is
Then I
that the
put,
CMYK black that you're putting down to get the
yeah, it's like 60, 30, 30, 100. So I'll go for like a
yeah.
220% saturation on that.
Mm.
Then, get as much toner on there as possible for that varnish to lay on. And then you can actually get, now the texture of the paper still shows through the foil here.
Which is
But
kind of cool.
yeah, but these are the same two sheets, but one just continued on to have the foil put on top. And you can see the difference between the two over here. Very interesting effect. Same thing here. We have parchment, which isn't supposed to work. Look at that. That's a tiny little logo. That logo was like a 1/2 inch wide, very small. This was a milled blade for an invitation. And then this uncoated digital, like a HP certified or Indigo certified digital uncoated. We use a lot of that for business cards, but it will only take so much varnish. So on one pass, you can see that on the thinner areas, it looks good. Like on the spiral that creates the O for wow. It looks good, but on the larger, broader areas, it starts to become kind of dimpled or rumpled. You run it through again and that goes away. So things like that. If you want a larger area that's smoother, you're going to have to send it through twice. And finishing, we're almost done. For odd shapes, table cutting, whether we use the Zun G3 or the Sharp Colex Sharp Cut. Both of them have a vacuum table that suck everything to the table, and then they have a blade that runs around and does the cutting and whatnot. That's the ideal way to cut this stuff because you're not using any pressure on it. Another way that we use is a flat digital table cutter. So you load the sheet and it has blades that go through and do these straight horizontal vertical cuts.
Yep.
As well as scoring, and of course the tried and true method of the guillotine is the absolute worst method because it compresses the foil as it lays on the varnish, and it compresses the varnish as it lays on the sheet, and actually may cause it to crack or dimple. You can do very small stacks, but if you have a large job, it's just going to take you all day. It's not worth it. Creasing, cutting. If it's an outside fold, you want to cut a gutter because you don't want to stretch it where it wraps around. On an inside gutter where it compresses and folds in, you don't have to cut a gutter. Simple as that. So that's it. The other thing that I might add to finishing is that it requires special care. It may need to sit a day or two before it goes to finishing to fully cure. And folding, you need to hand fold everything.
Right. Matt, this was phenomenal amount of information, and I thank you for trying to fit so much into it. Does anybody on the call have any questions for Matt? And do you like this format? Is this something we should do on a regular basis, or what are you guys thinking? Let's have a chat.
I mean, I'm just gonna go ahead and say, yeah, we should definitely do this on a regular basis. And then I guess I had a question more about uncoated stuff and like lightweight stock. Like, what's the lightest weight that you run through your MGI?
The lightest weight that we've run, and it requires some hand assist. In fact, the last job that I did was almost a disaster. It was vinyl label on a paper paper backer that you peel off. It wasn't heavy enough. It was just it was such a thin stock. It was out of spec, but it felt like normal label stock. It just felt like something you would get out of a box of Avery that you'd buy at the Office Depot or whatever. That's what it felt like in weight, but I had to load each one of those into the guide by hand, past at the margin table. It couldn't even go through the feed section. Um, but once I got it at that stage, it fed into the machine okay and went through it just fine. But there's some workarounds that you can do, but technically the paper cannot be any. They go by thickness, and the technical specification is 0.15 millimeters.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm
so
writing that down so we can run it
Well,
through.
and again, remember, you guys. I think you guys are running an Evo, if I'm not
Oh
mistaken.
yeah, we are.
And
we
Matt is running a 3DS, so there's going to be a difference in not just the thicknesses that you can run, but also the drops are a little bit thicker. So, and Marco, jump in here because I know this is your area of expertise too. Is that you can get away with some things on the 3DS regarding uncoateds on Matt's
Yes.
that you may not be able to pull off on your Evo. Is that about right?
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Technically, the varnishes are different. So everything that Matt does on uncoated stock, it will be a hell of a nightmare on the Evo or 3DL because they use the thinner varnish, and I printed 3 or 4 or even 5 passes on some of the uncoated designer papers and didn't get the results that I can do it. That you can do on all the small machines.
Yeah.
So 3DS, 3D1, now Akurio Shine, all of those machines use the thicker varnish. So everything that Matt said will be possible on the small machines. On a big machine, Evo and 3DL, so B2, B1 machines, it is really, really pain in the ass.
To really work in it to get it there.
Yeah. Probably you will not get the good result. Believe me, I tested it.
And sheets and stuff.
Yeah, you as I know, the Matt and knows the name of the Soho Touch series paper, who is something like uncoated. I don't know. It has some different name in USA, and it's very, very grateful for the jet varnish process because it feels like an uncoated paper, but you have no problem even with one pass. Everything is okay.
So you guys in the US, if you're on the US from this call, the distributor is GPA, and they're selling a Fedragoni paper called Soho Touch, and that's something that looks and feels uncoated, like Marco was saying. Nina, I just spoke to them at D-Scoop this week. They're coming out with a line of different papers also that look uncoated and feel uncoated, but are technically coated and should work well. So I would reach out to GPA and to Nina to ask about what papers are compatible that look uncoated for the jet for whatever machines you're running.
Okay, yeah, thanks. We wrote all that down.
Well, guess what? You guys are gonna get. I'm gonna just send me your email or something. I'll send you a recap. I'll be posting this video to the internet so that everybody can have access to it, as well as a recap. So if you guys need anything, it'll be on our YouTube channel probably in the next couple of hours or so.
Okay.
Very cool. Any other questions? No other questions. Well, listen, Matt, I'd like to thank you very much for a phenomenal session. Let's try to do this once a month. Let's get as many designers as possible. If you guys have clients that are also designers and we want to get together and have a conversation or have a little bit more of a deep dive, we'll look to do this more often. I think this is a really a fun group of people, and we have a lot of things that we can share and learn from one another to be able to grow the market. So, Matt, thank you very much. Everybody who joined us, thank you very much for joining. and we will look to see you guys very soon.